Hey, you're listening to the Intentional Documentary Podcast. So glad to have you. Around here, I'm gushing over the stories behind the pictures that we freaking love of our own lives. You know, the ones we hold as high value and iconic, because this is where photography meets real life. I'm your host, Marie Moss, and I believe that the best way to approach your photography is through your lens, your way. Through insightful conversations with photographers, I'll explore preserving life with your camera and using what lights you up to grow your brand. Let's get started. Hey there, how's it going? Over here in the US, in North America, we're enjoying the end of our summer. Back to school is creeping up on us, and most of us are probably not really thinking about the fall season or after the holidays quite yet, because we're immersed in backyard barbecues and being in the pool or at the beach and hanging out with our kids before they gotta go back to school. Now, if you're not in North America, you're probably like, we are so far from that kind of a season, and I get that. So this episode's timing might be a little bit off for you, but I can promise the principles still apply. Have you ever reached a point in your business where you've gotten through the client workload and you've got a bit of a break, not just in work, but in revenue, and you find yourself in a little bit of a panic over that? Like, oh no, I really need to do something to get some clients on the books or do something to bring in a little income. I've been there. And in the past, in my direct sales business, that would be whipping up a hostess special to get people to book a party with me. In my photography business, that was often whipping up some sort of a promotion to get some bookings on my calendar quickly. And in Fearless and Framed, I've done this so many times that it's not even funny, where I've put so much energy into launching something like we talked about in the last episode with Kyla Roma. And then I got on the other side of that launch and I'm like, oh shoot, now I haven't planned for this season. And so then I get an idea, and that idea feels really, really good and exciting, but I didn't plan for it. I didn't prepare for it because I just got the idea. So then I dive in and create the thing and sell the thing all in one season, which never leaves you with something that's wildly successful when you rush it like that. Or that idea just gets shelved thinking, okay, next year we're going to do this. I'm going to plan for this early and I'm going to make it happen. Only for next year to come and it never happens. Have you ever been there with something? If you're saying yes over there, in this episode, you'll learn 7 key phases of a beginner level photography workshop to prep for so that you can rock your first or next class. Even if you don't have these workshops on your radar, I still look at these 7 key phases whenever I'm looking at a product or service that I'm creating. So I have no doubt that it will help you, but I am going to highlight these workshops here because I believe in them, and especially for our audience, probably including you, documentary and lifestyle photographers, these workshops can be a breath of fresh air in so many ways. The thing is, everyone plans for the workshop itself, but there's so much more around the workshop that you need to take into consideration in order to leverage the workshops into the big picture of your business. So I've got a few things that come up all the time that I think keep people on the fence from doing workshops. So I want to knock those blocks down right off the bat. The first is, can I teach a workshop? Am I good enough to teach a workshop? Can I actually do this? Am I ready to do this? If you can work with clients, you can teach a workshop. I mean, all of our photography knowledge is so close to us. It's right under our noses, but we're just too close to see how much we know and how much we've grown since before we knew how to use our own cameras. We know a lot more than someone who has zero experience with their camera. So guaranteed, you can teach people a thing or two. Speaking of cameras, this is the number 2 thing that comes up a lot, and it has to do with gear. You do not have to know all the gear out there to teach a workshop. I know that was one of my concerns. Like, how can I help people with their camera if I don't know how to use it? Well, it's simple. Just have your attendees bring their manual. Inside my program, Profitable Photography Workshops, I have a tool for your students too that doubles as a way to ease your mind in this. But at the end of the day, just remember that you're there to teach people who already have cameras. You're not there to sell them on gear, so you don't need to know all the ins and outs. And the stuff that you are teaching them is so basic and pretty well universal. Like everybody has a shutter on their camera. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty basic stuff that you're getting into. Now, before we get into the 7 phases, in true and full transparency, I do have a done for you workshop package called Profitable Photography Workshops. I'm an advocate for teaching these fun and easy beginner level photography workshops, not just because I have the product, but because in my opinion, they are the best and fastest way to get in front of a room of your dreamiest potential clients and make a high impact, memorable connection all while you're serving them. I mean, I just want to really draw this out and highlight this. You get their undivided attention during your workshop. I mean, leading up to your workshop. Once they've bought your seat, you've got their attention. There is no other platform that is going to give you their undivided attention for that amount of time to really create a transformation. And you might argue, well, I could talk for 3 hours on my Instagram story live or whatever, or on Facebook live, but they're probably not going to pay attention because they haven't planned to set aside however many hours of their time to listen to you. But when they're committing to show up on a Saturday morning or a Friday evening, they're there to give you their attention. That is such a big deal. And the last little roadblock that I run into with people who are on the fence is, am I creating competition? And the answer is no. You're creating dreamier potential clients who could continue to work with you, or they go out and tell their friends about you, your workshop, and your approach to photography, but they are so brand new to the photography world that they are so far off from business that's most likely not even on their radar at that point. They just want to make a good picture, one good picture that they can hang on their wall. Like that is their goal at that time. So I would not even worry about that. So those are 3 things that now you don't need to worry about. Can I teach a workshop? Do I have to know all the gear? And am I creating my competition? But here's something you do need to pay attention to, because you cannot treat these workshops like a one and done thing. Like, okay, I did a workshop for 10 people and then sit there and wait for them to come to you begging to work with you again, because it just doesn't work like that. So that's why we're going to get into these 7 phases to prep for. These you do got to pay attention to. For this, I have a workbook for you. Pause right now to grab it. Go to fearlessandframed.com/022 to get to this episode's show notes, or text the number 022-TREAT to 44222 and I'll text it over to you. Well, it'll get sent to your email, and then you'll be able to follow along. This book goes through all 7 phases with questions. Some of them I don't even cover in this episode, and it's like got little reflection sections there, so you can put down all of your notes and ideas and basically turn it into your own personal playbook. Because whether you grab Profitable Photography Workshops or not, it doesn't matter. I want you to set yourself up for success and really look at the big picture of how this fits into your business. These workshops are easier than you think, and kind of circling back to what I said in the beginning, how we're in this end of summer phase. If we just do a little bit and a little bit and a little bit from now until, say, November, you could be ready to rock the heck out of your first or next workshop. My best workshops have sold at the end of November and early December, and then right after the holidays in January as well. So just to give you a little context there. So are you ready for these phases already? Let's go. All right, phase number 1 is the planning phase. And this stuff might seem kind of obvious. You got to tackle the logistics. When are you going to have your first workshop? Where are you going to have it? And I want you to think about the experience for them. How much do you want them to learn? What do you want them to really walk away with? How do you want them to feel when they are there? Personally, I like the at-home cozy feel. I like to run workshops in-home as opposed to some fancy conference room type of a setup because I want them to feel familiar with shooting where they're going to be shooting at home. So in all of this, think of ease for you as well. And you might have this idea for some big, elaborate weekend retreat or something like that. But are we really there yet? I think we need to start small. So I want you to think of like what is most easy, like emphasize on the ease for you. Then the second part of the planning phase is the transformation. What are you really selling? And this isn't just to come up with something for this workbook, but this is going to transfer over into your marketing communication. So I want you to think, all right, I'm not just teaching people how to use the buttons on their camera. What I'm really teaching them is this. And start planting that seed out into your community and ask, like, what do they really want? If they knew how to use their camera, what would that give to them? Because that is the big picture that you want to paint inside of your marketing. And I know it might seem a little bit weird to think about marketing in the planning phase, but the best marketers, they plan that stuff out. They don't just throw spaghetti at the wall and let things stick. All of the words in your social media posts, on your sales page, and all that good stuff are going to be intentional because of this planning phase. Phase 2 is promotion. Now it's time to let people know about your workshop. This is the plan I see the most. Workshop created and planned, check. Sales page up, check. Announce registration is now open as loud as you can on your social media platforms. You might sell out a workshop or 2 or 3, but that plan is not sustainable. For more launching strategies, definitely listen back to episode 21 with business strategist Kyla Roma if you haven't already. But with profitable photography workshops, you also get my entire launching bonus, which is a video, and it's my blend of timeless content to a content plan. It is a bit of work up front. Creating content is always work up front, but it is so rewarding because that content becomes reusable and timeless, and it gives you data to work with moving forward. For your first workshop, I'd recommend doing something really simple, like reaching out to everyone you know and simply asking them if they know anyone who, and then fill in the blank. Fill in that blank really well. Going back to your planning phase, you've got a couple of options. You could leave it at the straightforward approach. Say anyone who wants to learn their camera. Do you know anyone who wants to learn their camera? And it works. I see a lot of context or content around finally use your big fancy DSLR and know how to use all the buttons. So it's like literal to learning their camera. Or you could highlight that transformation that you want to give them at your workshop. So highlight why they want to use their camera. They want to learn to use their camera to fill in the blank, make art, preserve memories, put prints of their kids on their walls, like whatever speaks to both you and the people that you've sort of researched with in phase 1, put that here. Then consider, do you want to market offline or online or both? Are there any Facebook groups you could offer this to? You could reach out to the admin, and it's not really an offer to promote something or do something in there for them. I mean, like that's part of it, but what you're really doing is you're cultivating their group culture. You're getting that group offline doing something together. And if you can frame it that way for them as it's an opportunity for basically to have a group team outing type of a thing, they might be really open to that. Plus, I'm sure they see the value in what you're doing anyway. And I bring this up because that's how I got my first workshops, was through a mom's group on Facebook. And then the last thing I'm going to leave you with in the promotion phase is create a content plan and stick to it. So think through your social media posts, think through any emails that you might be writing, maybe blog posts, maybe Facebook Live sessions that you might want to do, or Instagram stories, like any way to sprinkle this before registration is open, like to create some buzz, but then also during the registration is open, until the cart closes, period. Phase 3 is pre-workshop connection. So you've sold some seats, now what? And real quick, speaking of selling seats, how many seats do you think you, quote unquote, need to sell for your workshops? I think I usually throw the number like 10 seats at a workshop around really easily, but I want to lower the bar a little bit, especially for your first workshops. Like, celebrate the heck out of your workshop if you have 3 people show up or 5 people show up, because it's giving you the opportunity to get in front of them. And I've ran a workshop for 3 people before, and yeah, I didn't make a ton of money out of it, but it was so nice. It felt like just a small group of girls like having some girl time together, almost like yeah, the workshop presentation was a part of it, but I got to really have real conversations with them, which was, I mean, that's just priceless, you know? So you've sold seats, now what? What can you do to keep up their engagement and excitement from the time they purchase their seat to the day of the workshop? Personally, I like to get them talking rather than shoving content down their throat. Invite them to share their story and who they are and really listen to them. Magic is happening at this point, my friend. This is a potential long-term relationship that's sparking. I do have a couple of handouts that I give to my students to keep them busy and learning too. I include these in profitable photography workshops, of course, but my main advice to you here is to plan your pre-workshop connection to be systemized. You don't want to have to try to juggle a whole bunch of plates here. I want you to create timeless content or questions. Questions can be content that you can use over and over and utilize an automated email sequence for this part. I love using ConvertKit as my email service provider. So that way your only job during this part is to respond to them when they actually respond to, say, some of your emails. And maybe it's a phone call that you want to make to them. Like, whatever it is, just make sure that you have it in a system. Phase 4 is the workshop itself. And when you're planning the workshop, there's 2 parts that you want to really pay attention to. Most people stop with the technical and the creative content. So this is essentially your curriculum, and you probably have this part already done before you have even started phase number 1. But there's another part to this that's really important, and it's the emotional and marketing content. What stories can you tell that feel like a perfect fit for the workshop content or curriculum and give you the opportunity to talk just a little bit about your photography business and your why behind your approach to photography? This is not a break in your presentation that feels like a commercial, but the stories, like the backstories to some of your client photos or your personal photos, or maybe it's not even a show and tell for a photo, it's literally a story. And is this section scaring the heck out of you to think about selling during a workshop? If so, it does not have to feel like that. It honestly, like, I don't like feeling like I'm on a soapbox selling and making people's skin crawl either. So I can assure you, this is not that. I've got 6 years of direct sales background, and what we call this part is planting seeds and basically dropping those hints of possibility of more, of how else they could work with you or what's possible in their lives. And then at the end, you will invite them to work with you further. Notice how I framed that. You're not just selling to them at the end, you're inviting them to work with you further. Your workshop should be set up to where that invitation feels really good and natural. It doesn't feel like this end of the thing spiel that starts to feel really weird and awkward. It should never feel like that. But you want to be able to invite them to work with you further at the end for whatever your goal is. Maybe that's a mentorship. Maybe it's a portfolio review. Well, it wouldn't maybe really be a portfolio review, but a review of their next couple weeks worth of photos or a session with you. This is part of the workshop curriculum that I created for you in Profitable Photography Workshops, but I want you to just think about the stories that you can tell in your personal life, in your client experience, that you can sprinkle into this. And that goes hand in hand with planning your photos with intention. So don't just go through your archive of photos and pick any old which one. Oh, I should have this example of light, or I should have this one for this example of composition, but really get intentional and share the photos that have great backstories to them, a mix of personal and client work. I don't think that part really matters, but just really make sure that you have more to say about your photo than just the light that's in it, for example. Does that make sense? Phase 5 is immediate follow-up. So after your workshop, you've got about 24 to 48 hours to re-engage with your workshop attendees. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to invite them to a Facebook group? Just send them a simple email thank you, or a phone call? Are you going to set up a call, maybe like a conference call where you can review some of their photos? Are you going to invite them to work with you further? Maybe that's a free thing that you're going to do for all of your workshop students, or maybe it is a more of a paid experience. Maybe it's not photography learning, but it's to work with you as a photographer. Allison Redmond tells you what she does in the next episode, which I absolutely love. So keep an eye out for episode 23 to be published next week. And the main thing here to know is let your students know that you care. They weren't just another seat that they stole where you worked with them and then you sent them on their merry way. Let them know you want them to succeed, and keep that door open. Let them know that door is open for them to ask a question or to work with you further. Phase 6 is student stories or testimonials or case studies, whatever you want to call them. I want you to go into your workshop looking for that testimonial, for that student story. Watch for who your star student may be. This doesn't necessarily mean the best, technically speaking, photographer, but look for those who are truly like implementing what they've learned right away. And it could be as simple as someone who went home, made pictures, and then hung them on their walls. Or it could be most improved, like you could see some of their photos from before and maybe they go back to that same location and scenario and their photos are drastically different. Or maybe it's not about the end result like of a photo, but it's just getting that in that habit of shooting more and finding enjoyment out of it. Like whatever it may be, look for those students that you could speak to get those student stories. So at this point, you could plan some sort of an invitation for them to have that conversation with you. It's not totally necessary. I think that's something you could do on the fly and make it more personal to what you noticed about them. But you also need to think about how you're going to conduct this. Do you want to have those before and afters of what their photos looked like before, what they looked like after learning from you? Do you want to have a conversation that's more video or audio based, or a simple text type of an interview based where it's just text based and they send you the text? It doesn't even have to be led with your questions. It could be, hey, can you give me just a few sentences about what you really gained out of this workshop? Personally, I think you can do more. Get a little background about who they are as like in their family dynamic, what their experience was with their camera, why they started looking for a workshop to learn their camera more. Like, why was that important right now? Like, go through your typical testimonial type questions to pull out some stories that you can use as timeless content for the next time you go to market your workshop. And finally, we've got phase 7, continuing contact. So you probably have a fair amount of people who chose not to work with you any further at this point. And that's okay. Just because these students don't move forward with you right now doesn't mean that they won't ever. But what it does mean is that it is just that much more important that you show them that you care. They weren't just another seat, just like I talked about in phase 5. You checked in immediately following the workshop. You need to do it again and again and again. It can taper off over time, but keep them on your radar. So at first, I would check in with them every few days, and then maybe once a week, couple times a month, once a quarter, and so on. A few things to consider. You could reach out to them through automated check-ins, like an email sequence or newsletter type of content. You could reach out to them personally, say Facebook, like Facebook Messenger, or just like comment on one of their photos that they share. They could share a photo on their personal page and go to it and comment on it. Maybe it's something that they made after their workshop, maybe it wasn't, but just check on them and say, hi, I love this. How's it going over there? You could also do some sort of in-person meetup, anything, but you need to consider what you're going to do so that you're not left scrambling once your workshop is done to try to hurry and put something together. Okay, I'm going to stop now. I'm sure you're in total information overload over there, thinking about all the pieces that a workshop can entail around the workshop. Here's the secret. Your first, your second, or your fifth workshop doesn't have to be perfect. So these are things to consider, certainly, but don't think you have to master everything before you do your first or your second or your fifth workshop. But here's a quick summary of the 7 phases. Phase 1, planning. Phase 2, promotion. Phase 3, pre-workshop connection. Phase 4, the workshop. Phase 5, immediate follow-up. Phase 6, student stories. Phase 7, continuing contact. At the end of the day, look at each phase with what is the easiest for me right now, and watch when you're arguing for the bells and the whistles. You can always add them later, but as ambitious entrepreneurs, of course, I think we're naturally gonna want to go for them, but as soon as we start to, it can really create unnecessary stress and confusion and overwhelm. So start slowly. Create the minimum viable option for your first or next workshop. My friend, I've done most of the workshop work for you, specifically documentary and lifestyle photographers. You can get my done for you workshop package at profitablephotographyworkshops.com. This is not my workshop. It's your workshop. It's not some curriculum that you must follow with my logo on it. It's completely yours. And then we have a community-led instructors lounge on Facebook so you can get support, hang out, share your workshop wins, and so on. So, and lastly, I'll leave you with this question. Are workshops for you? There are 3 main benefits that I can think of. The joy of talking about your craft in a way that also serves others. The profit, because these have a very low expense. And when you're done with the workshop, if you've set everything else up so that you have a system, it's not like photography where you have 40 hours ahead of you of editing. These can be a really light and refreshing way to gain some income in your business. And then finally, these workshops act as a quality lead magnet. With every workshop you launch, not teach, notice I said launch, you're getting exposed to more of your potential dream clients, meaning not just your students' eyes are on your business, but a whole bunch of people who don't sign up for your workshop are being introduced to you or seeing you again. With your students, you're creating better clients who value what you do. So there's so many good reasons that these could be a wonderful marketing channel for your business. So keep that in mind. But bringing it back to the top, when you are looking at a project like this, whether it's for a workshop or you want to create an ebook or you want to add mentoring services to your menu of ways that you serve, whatever it is, break it down in these 7 phases. And even when you're busy in these backyard barbecues and planning for back to school and all of that, what's one thing that you can do to move the needle in your business every day? And it can be as simple as just brainstorming the ideas for these different phases so that when you can get back to work, when things sort of settle on the other side of back to school or whatever this next season looks like for you, you can slow and steady build on this goal that you have. So I hope all of this is helpful. If you're still not sure about workshops or any of these topics today, hit me up over on Instagram at Fearless and Framed. I'd love to hear from you. Talk to you soon. Thank you for listening. If you've got a quick sec, leave a review. Utilize that space to let me know what spoke to you out of today's episode, what questions were sparked from you. Every single time that I hear from you, you spark ideas in me that I put right back into the podcast for you. So it's win-win, right? You can always hit me up over on Instagram at Fearless and Framed is my handle. And as always, you can go to fearlessandframed.com/intentional documentary podcast for this episode's show notes and any mini mags and past show notes. All the goodness is over there. And until next time, what are you going to preserve next? Talk to you soon.